Good evening and welcome to the World of Martial Arts interview with Brian Trenchard Smith.
What inspired you and how did you get in touch with Golden Harvest for an interview with Bruce Lee?
Well, first of all, Golden Harvest were going to release Bruce Lee's Chinese pictures in Australia through a distributor that I had a relationship with. And they wanted me to come up with some promotional ideas to sort of ease the Australian public, which is not necessarily known for its multicultural attitudes back in 1960, 1970. That is much more multicultural now. Bruce had done, he'd shot Enter the Dragon, started to shoot Game of Death, his next personal project after The Way of the Dragon.
Yeah, that's right,
And it had to be interrupted because Warner said, hey, we've got this American co-production that's hot to trot. And can you just suspend shooting? We'll come in for 5 weeks and shoot it. And then you can go back to your personal movie. No doubt they were interested in that too. But they wanted a more American styled movie. In many respects, they were hedging their bets. They had to have, they had to have a white co-star, and they had to have a black supporting actor. So my suggestion was, why don't I go to Hong Kong and make a documentary about this new world of Kung Fu in Hong Kong and the wonderful movies that come out of it. Many of which I'd seen. I've been a fan of Shaw Brothers cinema, which was tended to be in Chinatown Chinese-only theaters, both Lygon Street in Soho and in Dixon Street in Sydney, I've been watching Asian cinema since The Seven Samurai when I was 14. So I was a fan. So I said, let me go to Hong Kong and shoot this documentary about the world of Kung Fu and interview Bruce Lee and have him talk about his vision of cinema as from an Asian perspective. And they thought, great. And I was funded to do that. And of course, I had written a 6-page outline for a movie that was subsequently called The Man from Hong Kong. And I had it in my bag, and I was going to find a way, obviously, having hopefully ingratiated myself with Bruce Lee, to slip it to him. But then the plane to Hong Kong touched down in Jakarta airport, and the newspaper hoardings in the transit lounge was saying Bruce Lee dies. So I thought, oh dear. Well, I've committed myself to this documentary and committed funds to it on the basis that Bruce will feature in it and with an exclusive interview. The carrying on to Hong Kong, I thought, well, okay, how do you deal with the unexpected? I think we touched on that, a little conversation with Mitzi, upshot was that Raymond Chow graciously provided time, and he and some of his executives gave us time to talk about Bruce Lee. They gave me clips from all Bruce's films, including clips from Game of Death, Game of Death. And the permission to use them. So I did emerge with something that I could use, and I did this 1-hour documentary, and then I came back the next year to do, well, later in the year.
Let's just hold you there, Brian, just nice and slow, because this is really interesting. So, as I said, you must have got permission, or you'd already sent in front to actually go to Golden Harvest. You'd already got that intro. You'd already got that intro.
The distributor, who'd been dealing with Raymond Chow for distribution of the films in Australia, made that arrangement. I was their designee, so to speak. That, obviously, if I would not have been able to cold call my way into Golden Harvest.
No.
But though I've been quite successful cold calling my way into various places, I went to Tokyo in 1968 and basically just rang up TV companies and film companies and said, "Hey, I'm a television executive from Australia, and I make dynamic promos, and I have a reel of my promos. I'd love you to see them, and I'd love to learn about how you make promos." It was my cunning way to get in and learn more about color television, because Australia was still
fantastic.
Anyway, cold calling can work, but in this case, an introduction works better. And so I'd gone up, done this thing, and it went on, and I'd done a lot of other work. I made a new trailer for Fists of Fury, a new trailer for The Big Boss, which we used the American print of Return of the Dragon, which was the way they sold the Big Boss in the US. And unfortunately, it was lacking the wonderful shot of Bruce bisecting this guy's head with a saw. Which I think they even cut that out for Singapore.
They cut that out. Going back to you got an exclusive interview with Raymond Chow. Who else can you remember you got? I know you said executives, but did you get any other of the actors that were around? Because I mean, George Lazenby must have been around at that time.
He was not in Hong Kong. He was in Hong Kong, but he was not available for interview. You can imagine days immediately after Bruce's death. It was about 4 days later that I was able to. 4 days after my arrival, I checked in with them the moment I arrived, and I did, within the rest of the day, I got a call back. I immediately went out, started shooting Hong Kong streets and background material, and, waited for responses to my hotel room. This is before cell phones, this is before internet. So, when you don't take care of emergency, unexpected events and rescheduling that quickly as you can today. But anyway, we managed. So I shot a bunch of stuff, and I shot interviews with Andre Morgan.
Important.
Yes. And also Ricky Yui of Pan Asia. And a bunch of stuff, and then went back and was able to make a 1 hour.
Because I think you filled in some of the questions I've asked you, but one of the things was because you were in Hong Kong at that time, what did you find? What was the atmosphere like in Hong Kong when people had found out? Well, as you'd found out, and found out that their hero Bruce Lee had died. What was the atmosphere like in Hong Kong at the time? Because you were there in '73 when that had happened.
The atmosphere in Hong Kong was severely depressed, shall we say. I mean, you could tell that people were not going around with smiling faces, and there was just a sense of a national tragedy, because Bruce Lee was a national hero who had elevated Chinese martial arts to something that the world could see, and this was had been proven by the box office, and would soon be proven by Enter the Dragon when it would come out. He had given class and dignity to Chinese characters, something that he felt was lacking from American representation, and he had devised his own kung fu series that ultimately went forward with David Carradine in the role, because Hollywood was not ready for a full Chinese actor to headline a TV series.
Absolutely,
American audiences were even more conservative then than they could be considered to be today. So it had to be, a character justified by being half Chinese, half white. Could have half white, you see, and so, it was not what he had in mind. He would have been, kind of amazing, I think, headlining the Kung Fu series. And then his parts of Green Hornet, Bruce Lee's parts in Green Hornet, and he was paid $400 a week on that show. $400 a week. Though a Hong Kong distributor bought the theatrical rights to Green Hornet and basically cut all of Bruce's scenes together and made a movie out of them. Because with the magic of dubbing, you can turn other people's dialogue into anything. So
absolutely,
he fashioned a movie out of his best fight scenes or all of his fight scenes in the 13 episodes of the Green Hornet, and that had established, as far as Raymond Chow was concerned, what his box office appeal would be in Asia. And Raymond was a far-sighted man, and he could see that this could travel internationally. I mean, and that was my feeling too, and that's why I chose martial arts as a genre to get into. For an unknown film industry like Australia, how do you break into the international film market? Well, action is the universal currency of cinema. Good punch-up plays well in America, in Sweden. Well, less so in Sweden. They don't like punch-ups so much. A good punch-up will play well in any language in the world. And so that's what I set out to make with Man from Hong Kong.
We're going a bit in front of ourselves, and I want to keep you focused because the stuff that I want is amazing, and you're saying all the right things, which is fantastic. You had the footage, you'd gone to get Bruce Lee, and you didn't get Bruce Lee. How did you put the world of Kung Fu together?
Well, luckily I had Bruce Lee in movie form, so I could talk about him and have other people talk about him, and then we could cut to him punching someone else to the ground or demonstrating the kind of flexibility and speed with which he did all his maneuvers. So as an old trailer maker, the standard techniques applied.
So were you able to use photographs and stuff like that and Burns effect to actually put it together?
No, I just did straight cutting. People talked about him, and then boom, 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 and I'd maybe do a little line of voiceover, over the opening, over the sequence that I was cutting to, or just make it a straight cut that where the ironic juxtaposition made perfect sense.
So now comes the big question. I am, and I think you'll come to agree, is I am a big Bruce Lee fan. And so therefore, your documentary eludes me. So I am desperate to see the world of Kung Fu. So what I'd like to say to you is, first of all, because you've said something there that's really interesting and about Australia not taking on and not being used to this genre, and you were the first one to actually put it on TV. Can you explain to us, or can you give us some feedback on what the response to your documentary on Australian TV was, and why is it not being made available to the rest of the world?
The response to the world of Kung Fu on Australian television was good. People liked it. I mean, they didn't want to, immediately give it an Emmy or something. They thought, whoa, this is interesting. It rated well, and rated sufficiently well for me to see, well, we could do a follow-up film to this. In fact, we could send Grant Page, Australia's leading stuntman, who I managed at that time and created vehicles for him, and as you have seen, and sent him to Hong Kong and to find out who is the successor to Bruce Lee. I pitched that to a rival network that had seen the ratings of the world of Kung Fu. And they said, hey, go ahead and do that. So it was, Golden Harvest were happy that I was going to have another bite of the apple, so to speak, because it could only be good publicity for them. So the World of Kung Fu documentary was then offered to British broadcasters. It was banned in England for being too violent for television.
Thank you.
So we're not going to fight that. And it had it had nunchuckers in it, which were cut out of all the Bruce Lee films in the UK. They were cut out of my man from Hong Kong as well. So that's life. But there was obviously no future for it on standard broadcast television worldwide. So I withdrew it. I then cannibalized some of the footage and put it into the new documentary when I went up to Hong Kong with Grant Page and did some stunts up there, interviewed a whole range of more people. And that at that time, George Lazenby was doing, he was doing Stoner.
He was doing Stoner, and he followed it with Queen's Ransom.
Yes, well, he was doing Stoner with Angela Mao, and I was there when they filmed him in a cage, and people were, thrusting sharp-pointed instruments at him, luckily with plastic tips. So I got to meet George and talk to him, and he would be the obvious villain from my man from Hong Kong. Now, by this stage, I was then able to pitch my film, my proposed film, to Raymond Chow, and they said they would think about it, and they eventually got back to me and said, well, if you can get half the money in Australia, we'll come up with the other half, but we'll have Wang Yu, previously #1 star before Bruce came along, and hopefully will be the #1 star in Asia again. You know his history: one-armed boxer, one-armed swordsman, etc. He was big, but Bruce was bigger. And then Jimmy, unfortunately, with his next few films, did not hit the mark that Bruce had made, because basically Jimmy is a really good street fighter, whereas Bruce, his flexibility, his athleticism, his incredible speed, he was just so superior. And that's what Hong Kong audiences really were kind of expecting from their top martial arts stars. Jimmy was, a personality who was very athletic and kind of, a bit sort of rebellious, and did get into fights with policemen occasionally when they stopped him for speeding. So I was told this just before he arrived in Australia for my film. And just bear in mind, Jimmy does get into fights with policemen. Okay.
Okay. Just hold in there. So just so that I put this to bed. So what has happened to the world of Kung Fu? Is it not in an entirety anymore now? It's not available.
It is not available. It was shot on what was called 16mm reversal. It was a cheap form of 16mm, where the negative you generate a positive print, and then you cut a duplicate positive print, and then you make a negative off that. But you can also you can make a succession of positive prints without creating a master negative. So I simply stripped the A and B rolls of of World of Kung Fu, which were sort of made up in a checkerboard fashion so that they can be printed in one continuous run. And I stripped out the shots that would be useful, a lot of Hong Kong background shots. And I still had all of the Bruce Lee clips. And I hadn't used Game of Death because in the previous one, because I'd just been promoting the Bruce Lee films that Australia had not seen yet and should know about, and the rest could wait. So in this way, I was able to incorporate a bit of Enter the Dragon and a bit of Game of Death. And that is called Kung Fu Killers, which I made for the princely sum of $13,000 of actual cash cost. Fly to Hong Kong, shoot for a week, and fly back and do post-production. And I sold that at a small profit to Australian television. But again, and then I have subsequently put it onto DVDs, some of my work. So that is the all you can see of the world of Kung Fu is in Kung Fu Killers, for which I shot, some additional material, obviously, of and I shot scenes for the love epidemic in Hong Kong as well, seeing as I was there. I took Grant to the Bottoms Up bar and filmed him with ladies there. This was a bar used in a James Bond movie.
Man from Hong Kong. No, Man with the Golden Gun.
Man with the Golden Gun. Same thing, but better.
So let's move on, because Enter the Dragon had a James Bond feel to it. So, and you've talked about George Lazenby. So how did you get George Lazenby? Was he under contract with Golden Harvest, as he had already made a film with Jimmy Wang Yu called Queen's Ransom? How did you get, was he still part of Golden Harvest, or did he sign a contract specifically for you for Man from Hong Kong? And how did you get Lazenby to be there and, get that feel of Bond into your movie?
Well, I always had a Bond feeling. Well, let me put it another way. George Lazenby had signed a 3-picture contract with Raymond Chow, and the plan was to partner him with Bruce Lee in a number of films. And in fact, they were going to have a dinner with Raymond and Bruce and George at a particular restaurant the night that Bruce died that afternoon. And no doubt what the subjects would be and whether George would have participated in the Game of Death and things like that. All of that would have been discussed, but sadly, Bruce he died, and with a great, a loss to world cinema. So George was under contract to Raymond Chow, and they saw, obviously, when I came up with Kung Fu, when I came up to shoot Kung Fu Killers, we had further conversations about my idea for The Man from Hong Kong, and it was pretty much set that Jimmy Wang Yu would play the hero and George would play the villain. Works for me. And George was, an Australian actor, so the co-star of a co-production would be Australian, and it was before a co-production treaty between Australia and China. This was the first Australian co-production with an Asian film company. There'd been co-productions with France, and I think a couple, maybe even Germany, or maybe and Greece. But Lee Robinson had done a couple of French co-productions. Anyway, but this was the first with an Asian country, and I hoped it would set a precedent, and there'd be lots more martial arts movies that could span, stories could span Australia and Asia. The Japanese had come and made a Western in the Australian desert. Yes, sort of in the early 70s before, yeah. So they were venturing outside of Japan to get audiences interested and give the Japanese audience something different. And they thought they'd do a sort of Japanese spaghetti western in Australia. I've never seen it, but they did shoot it there, and you should track it down.
I may do that.
Yeah.
What was Jimmy like to work with, and did he ever convey to you his feelings about Bruce Lee? You know, was he happy with Bruce Lee, or was he feeling a little bit envious that Bruce had taken some of his limelight, something like that?
Well, it seemed politic not to talk about Bruce Lee too much. It was better to talk about Jimmy. I think that's the same with all stars, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you're working with George Clooney, and you say, yeah, but let me compare you to Gary Cooper. When you have that same square jaw, you have that sort of clean-cut look, and you seem like a decent guy, and he really epitomized those qualities. Don't you agree, George? So I think that would not be a good approach, for a director to make with his star. But my problems with Jimmy were that he had directed and produced and reportedly written 8 films, ranging in budget from $80,000 to $120,000. Here was I, with a budget of $500,000 for my first feature film, having made dramatized documentaries beforehand. So he certainly was very anxious that things be done entirely his way, and they weren't always, and they weren't at all sometimes. And he just thought that I was a privileged, British, probably sounded like the Hong Kong British policeman that he didn't like. So I don't think he beat up British policemen. He beat up Chinese policemen.
But let's stop you there, Brian, because he did beat you up in the movie, and also you set yourself on fire. Tell us about why you did that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it seemed like a good idea at the time.
No.
Two things. I call it vanity, whatever, and call it, my wanting to at least participate some way in martial arts. I thought, well, I'll write myself a little cameo part here. That could be arrogance of Hitchcock, you see, but not deserved. I thought I can probably handle a simple thing and get beaten up, and that will be good. And what's more, it'll save money, because there's a scene that has to be shot in a Sydney set. It's where 50% of the film has to be shot in Australia, 50% in Hong Kong, and yet 90% of the movie is set in Australia. So a whole bunch of Australian scenes have to be shot in Hong Kong on sets. So there is a martial arts academy fight in which I notice the intruder, unwisely confront the intruder, get the shit quickly kicked out of me, gave me the opportunity to be punched through toffee glass, which I've always wanted to do, and then foolishly rise from the dead again and rush out into the corridor where the elevators are and pursue Jimmy there. And those scenes were shot in Australia first, and then the Martial Arts Academy fight scene was shot later. So I, in the first part of the shooting, rush down the corridor with blood streaming from my forehead, because I had, the plan was I would be punched through glass. And then we, contrive in a somewhat unbelievable way to stop the elevator and have me slide down the lift shaft, and he gets up, and down the cable, and he gets up out of the lift, and we fight on top and dodge the counterweight, and then he knocks me down and generally stamps on me until I am lifeless. His attitude to this was, "Oh, you want to do this? Okay, well, fine." And he told his fellows, "I'm just going to treat him like I would treat any Hong Kong stuntman," which sometimes involved a little bit of contact. Certainly, that punch to the stomach that doubles me over on top of the elevator, and there was contact there. So my reaction is quite genuine.
It was.
Truth in performance. I always believe in. Anyway, so that was that aspect of it. I was always striving in my films to push the envelope a little bit and give the audience something that they hadn't normally seen. And with Grant Page and a stuntman buddy of his, Bob Woodham, we discovered a fire retardant gel, which was called water gel, and was generally, soaked in a blanket and used to throw over an industrial fire, which, where you didn't want to use water. But we thought, oh, well, why don't you throw it over a burning man? And what's more, what if the burning man has got this gel all over his body, and that will, for a short period, insulate him from the flame, because the water gel automatically puts out flame upon contact. So if you have a long johns soaked in water gel, and you have another layer of cotton that keeps the water gel at bay for a while, and then you throw the costume on top, and you fuel the costume, and you light it up, and boom, off you go, before the gel can soak through the insulating layer and put out the flame, then you can have a nice little burn. And if you twirl around, you want to make it good for the camera. So one thing is, don't inhale fumes from coming off the flames. So if you move around, the flames go off you, you know where to take a breath. So I've done 5 of them, small ones. There are pictures of me. I think it's one that's fairly public, that I did on the top of the Kerridge Odeon building in Auckland to promote The Man from Hong Kong's opening in '75. Anyway, I wanted to have George Lazenby catch fire during his climactic fight with Jimmy Wang Yu. And water gel enables us to do fire stunts without a fire suit, where the whole head and encased, and so you could only film those shots in wide shot. You never saw the participant, but if you could actually see, wow, that former James Bond George Lazenby is actually on fire while he's trying to throw punches.
Fantastic.
Wouldn't that be cool? And so I said to George, well, how about it? It's perfectly safe, and I will show you. And so they got some old costuming out from the wardrobe department, and Grant gelled me up. I put the costume on, fueled me, set me on fire, and I demonstrated it to George. He said, okay, well, all right. And it went fine, except for one little thing that we hadn't thought about. And so, I have to claim, I have to say it was an irresponsible decision, fueled by ambition, that I should not have asked George to do this. And the one thing we had not taken into account is that the additional layer of costuming might make it difficult for him to get his jacket off. The plan was, once he was kicked into the fire, came out on fire, continued to fight, he'd be struggling to get the jacket off and then throw it at Jimmy. And there would be sufficient action in all of that for the two cameras to show, wow, that is George Lazenby on fire. And two things happened just before, when the cameras were rolling and getting up to speed. Jimmy just left his mark and squirted some more fuel on George's back, thinking that wasn't quite enough. George said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Don't worry, George." I mean, I should have said, "Cut. That's just not according to procedure." Any first assistant director today would have absolutely, would have not allowed me to do what I did, and would, and correctly so, and would have called a halt to proceedings when someone did not follow the bouncing ball along the procedure. But anyway, it was seconds. The cameras were going up to 120 frames per second. And I called action, and it went smoothly up to the point when George is trying to take the jacket off. And it was too tight around the elbows, and he couldn't get it off. And the carefully rehearsed movements that we'd done over and over again, so it was just theoretically like clockwork, were broken. And he didn't know what to do, and he kind of was getting a bit panicky. So Grant rushed in, tackled him, brought him to the ground, and we threw the water gel blanket over him. And the net result was that on one hand there was a patch where he'd rubbed the gel off his hand, and it got burned. And I don't know which degree burn it was, but I don't think there's a mark there today. The water gel has certain healing properties in it anyway, and it's worked on burn victims, and even a stunt man who seemed to have been burned badly. Well, even Grant got burned on Mad Dog Morgan, all up here, but water gel, it was fine. No scars. So that was, George was not scarred. George was pissed off. He was not happy. I'd said, "You won't get hurt." And there he was. He'd been hurt. And that was wrong. And, I did a bad thing.
Talking about getting hurt, one of the big things that was in the press, and I've sent you a little treasure, and I will get you one if you want. I've sent you the front cover of Dragon magazine. Don't know if you ever saw it. And when you look at your inbox, you will see the photograph of that magazine. If you got it, I'll send it to you. But it was reported that poor old Jimmy Wang Yu fell out of the sky to his near death when the hand glider collapsed in midair. How did you take that one?
No, well, that's an exaggeration.
Okay.
We wanted to train Jimmy to be in a hang glider that would be tethered to the ground, maybe about 30 feet up, and into the wind, and held there. The wind would, and tethered. So we could then get his close-ups against the sail for as wide as we could without seeing the tethers, but seeing that the wind was definitely affecting the sail, and he was definitely in the air, and he could make little movements like that, and that would cut in with the shots that Grant Page would do in the kite. So in the course of giving him training one Sunday, he got up, but then something failed. I wasn't there, but and it did a nosedive into the ground. And I think the bar, the A-frame bar, caught him at the bottom of the ribs. And so the doctor said he had maybe cracked 2 ribs. And so it wasn't a near-death experience, but naturally, when you want to get publicity for the film, a Hong Kong newspaper will say anything.
Right. You cleared that one up. Thank you very much.
And you know, I don't actually think that. I think the audience enjoys suspense on the screen, and they enjoy, stories of courageous actors. But I don't think it's wise to exaggerate things. I've told you the true story of how.
No, that's good. I remember the Daily Mirror. It was a double page spread in the Daily Mirror. Jimmy Wang Yu nearly dies. You know what I mean? So the new Bruce Lee sort of film. Were you at the London premiere? Were you at the London premiere of Man from Hong Kong?
Yes, I was.
Yeah. Can you tell us what that was like? Can you give us your experience to what it was like to release a martial arts movie in London at that time in
Well, I had a ball in London for the UK release of The Man from Hong Kong. I was 29 and kind of full of myself, and nothing has changed. Well, I hope I'm less obnoxious now, but I try to be obnoxious in a humorous way, because I don't really take myself very seriously. I take my work seriously, but I just believe that we should all have fun while making movies, and you make good movies by making everyone around you feel good. But I digress. But Hong Kong, Man from Hong Kong was a wonderful promotional experience for me in the UK, because I got on radio and I got a couple of minor regional television interview, and they couldn't get me off. As you know, I hate a chat, so I had a ball, and was therefore attended the press screening at the London Pavilion of The Man from Hong Kong. And had the effrontery to get up on the stage in my brown, tan Hong Kong-made leather suit, and address a fairly full Stalls auditorium of press, and said, "Hello, thank you for coming to the movie. We had such fun making this film. It took us 10 weeks to do this, and it only cost $500,000. And I hope it was my idea to satirize the invincible superhero, and yet the appalling amount of destruction of property, not to mention loss of life, that occurs in the pursuit of justice." And I briefly summarized the subtext of the film, and I try to do this with humor. So I hope you get the joke, because I was worried that they would just think it's another piece of chop socky, and I was not having enough faith in advance in all my own jokes. So I did this, and got an obliging round of applause when I left, because I made sure I'd
have been putting that there. Another thing
that's the British Film Institute monthly bulletin was there, and they mentioned this in their review, and they said it was an example of majesté laissée.
Oh my goodness me!
That one should never address the critics.
Oh no.
A filmmaker should never address the. Well, I doubt it was a plummy critic. It was probably someone who didn't like my plummy sound of voice. I don't know, but I don't know. But they didn't particularly get it.
No.
Anyway, but most of the press, I've got a great press ad which has lots of quotes. I don't know I think that's somewhere online. It can be found. News of the World, Sunday Telegraph, Daily Telegraph, Daily Mail, all action, great fun. They absolutely responded to my prompt, and then they enjoyed the movie and didn't object, didn't resent the prompt.
So did I.
Effrontery works.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, another little question is, did you choose Sky High by Jigsaw? And what a lovely choice, because it actually rated in the British pop charts. How did that come about?
And the Japan, Sky High rated in the British pop charts, the American, the Australian, and the Japanese pop charts. But we got it by accident. The composer of Man from Hong Kong, Noel Quinlan, who's a brilliant Australian composer with a very interesting career worth looking up, and has done a lot of Chinese music. He married a Chinese girl in Hong Kong, Australian, and he now lives back in, I think, back in Sydney. Anyway, Noel Quinlan wrote a terrific score. I said, make it Bondish, and do what you can. Do your own thing, but I want that Bond flavor. And I think he really hit the mark. And came time for the title song, and you don't get a hit song called "The Man from Hong Kong." No, so even when someone can sing, and so I thought, well, give me a kind of Matt Monro Bond, male singer, Matt Monro Bond song, as he had done. God, I was momentary blanking.
From Russia with Love.
From Russia with Love, yes, that's right. My favorite of the early ones. So he hit the mark with a song called Power.
All right.
Which, he's the man with the power. That was one of my ad lines, actually. He's the man with the power. And you find it in one of the press ads somewhere, an early Hong Kong press ad. Or a pre-Cannes press ad. Anyway, so I thought it worked well, and it worked for the 4 minutes of the opening title. And we had no plans for a single. But when the British distributor saw it, they said, if we had a hit song, that would help broaden the appeal of the film from just this core martial arts market that is just beginning, not yet reached the scale that it subsequently did, so we have a connection with Leeds Music, and they have this new band called Jigsaw, and they have an arranger, Richard Hewson, who's arranged for the Beatles, for a whole host of major artists. So why don't they deliver you a song that will play exactly to fit the main title, and then a 2-minute single that we can release? And so that, I said, I can't argue with the commercial logic of that. Sorry, Noel, but my vision is flexible, even right up to the day of release. And if I was Stanley Kubrick, I could go back and recut and take 10 flabby minutes out of The Shining and make it the more effective cut that it is today, and so forth. I do that with most movies, actually, because when you're a trailer cutter, any film can be good for 2.5 minutes, and some of my films are. So anyway, but get back to Sky High. Jigsaw and Richard Hewson's arrangement, and look at those very effective opening beats in the opening title sequence that are all, that's his arrangement, and it's a very effective kick into the song. Very Bondish, as requested, and really sets the tone for the film. So I couldn't be happier with the end result. And Noel agrees. And the recent Blu-ray, the recent Blu-ray of Man from Hong Kong, I believe, now has a selection of Noel's music on it, including the song Power.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic.
I'm a fund of knowledge today.
I was actually talking to somebody to actually get it Man from Hong Kong released over here. I have the Australian copy because a guy, one of my friends over there, who has done Bruce Lee films and documentaries, he sent me, because he said I knew how passionate I was about Man from Hong Kong and how much I loved it. So he sent me the DVD, but I didn't know there was a Blu-ray. I will attempt to try and get that. But I'm hoping I might be able to attempt somebody over here to actually release it, and maybe you do something with it, eh?
Well, certainly I will always promote my own films.
Yeah.
But Umbrella Entertainment control, well, they are my distributor for all the early work that I control the rights for. And they have been trying to get a UK deal going. And I don't know what has happened with that. Maybe they don't want to pay enough money.
Yeah, I think it was Arrow Films that they were talking to, and I'm working with, me and Will are working with Arrow Films, and I was saying, you know,
well, Arrow do a good job.
They do.
I like Arrow. I think the people I dealt with are probably left by now, but I like dealing with them on Dead End Drive-In, which is one of my better films.
Yeah, no, they're good people. Right, moving on. Although you've used martial art, you have moved martial arts in your other movies. How did you get drawn back in 1988 to make two early Australian martial art movies called Day of the Panther and Strike of the Panther? How did these come about, and how happy are you with making two martial arts movies back to back?
The Panther pictures were a wonderful experience. Some people would think they're totally awful movies, but then they're not, they don't share my sense of humor, let's say. But they came about by accident. I got a call from a producer on a Wednesday night, and I knew he was shooting in West Australia and that he was worried. And he said, I'm not happy with the first few days of shooting, and I've spoken to the investors, and we will fire the director who also wrote the script if you will come in and take over immediately, and we'll change the script on the run because it's not good, and but we couldn't get it fixed. So on Thursday, they arranged the ticket and made the deal. So I flew into Perth on Friday morning, having read the scripts on the plane, and agreed they're pretty awful, but they at least provide a coat hanger for a series of good fight scenes. So let's see what we can do, because certainly the lead actor is good at fighting. He has a natural grace, and there's an audience for what he does. And that was proven in England, I think, when it was released by Guild. I think they put out the VHS back in the day. And Eddie Stasek and Jim Richards, the choreographer and his usual villain, actually did live shows in shopping malls to promote the Panther pictures in the UK. So that obviously worked for somebody. And people still like them today because they are campy. They're self-satirical of the absurdities of the plotting of these kinds of movies. I just reveled in them. I mean, you can't eliminate the absurdities. You might as well embrace them and make them fun. So that and celebrate the cliches and the standard tropes of the genre. So I flew into Perth on the Friday morning and thought, let's start with an action scene on Saturday. And during that action scene, we can take a look at all the other problems the script has and the cast has. In fact, it was pretty clear to me that several members of the cast needed to be replaced, and they were not well chosen in the first place. So we ended up recasting 4 parts and cutting characters and adding new characters and bringing in 2 completely new characters for the second film to be played by Rowena Wallace and John Stanton. And we rewrote, recast, rechose locations on a daily and nightly basis for 8 weeks. And thus both films were shot back to back with interwoven schedules. One of the challenges of the schedule was the availability of qualified martial arts performers in Perth. 5 hours flight from the East Coast, and we brought Guy Norris in before he became the big stunt choreographer that he now, and second unit director of Fury Road that he now is, and great guy. I worked with him on BMX Bandits and 5 Mile Creek, but we brought him in and a team. But we needed a lot of fist fodder for Eddie, and we were going to run out of fist fodder, and they all needed to be put down for good at the end of each fight. So initially we had the opening fight scene in the film has people in masks. And we even had a joke at the expense of the mask, because when you rip the mask off, then his face is painted exactly like the mask. But I just thought that would be my comment on masks. But that enabled us, therefore, to disguise the identity of these 3 stunt fighters. And so they performed in subsequent fights, initially with beards, mustaches, change of hairstyle, and finally in hockey masks in Strike of the Panthers climax. So short of fighters, I even had Jim Richards, who was playing the villain, put on ninja black pajamas and a hockey mask to add to the numbers in one fight scene, because he wouldn't be recognizable. Anyway, so it was, somehow I knew at the very beginning that I could make this work if I could just generate, 3 or 4 minutes, but certainly 3 minutes of visually, exciting, usable footage every day. That would be good. And I had to make 2 85-minute films in 2 4-week shoots with interwoven schedules. And look, they have their shortcomings, and the second film naturally needs 7 minutes of the high spots of the first film as a reprise. And just in case you forgot, this is what has already happened. Vital to this complex story we're about to tell you. But I think that's fun, and the audience that saw only the sequel really appreciated that. It was screened at the Hollywood Theatre in Portland in my presence in front of 300 people, and they loved it. Anyway, you have to be of a certain postmodern frame of mind, let's say, to appreciate some of my films. And the Panther pictures are a glorious ode to the late 80s fashion and late 80s
They are what they are, and they're beautiful, mate. As I said, the wonderful thing about it is there were 2 Australian. You didn't get too many Australian martial arts movies.
There should have been many more, and I should have made more. But they were not popular. There was a cultural cringe in Australia. There was the ruling elite of arts culture basically thought, these are B or C grade entertainment. We should be making things that are on a higher intellectual level.
I go to the cinema to be entertained, and that's what you do, Brian. You entertain me, and that's what I love.
Well, you see, that to me, there is no worst part in making any film. It's a great privilege to make a film. Very few people get that opportunity. And I've made 41 long forms and directed episodes for 12 television series. So, you know, I'm happy as a pig in shit, you know. Who could wish for better? So therefore, every filmmaking experience to me is fun. Now, obviously, some had greater challenges than others. And the less money you have to work with, the harder it is to achieve the quality that you want. So in that regard, that would be my kvetch about, you know, low budget martial arts movies and dramatized documentaries. But I just love the process. So I don't think of the, I don't actually carry memories of the stresses involved. You know, I just think that was fun, and I got away with it. You know, I brought it home. It was a finished, saleable film that didn't bankrupt anybody, and you know, everyone got their pound of flesh. All the stakeholders got their pound of flesh. Some made more money than others, but you know, with their tax breaks and their return of their investment, they did okay.
This is just a personal one, so you don't have to answer this if you want, but I always felt that, how did you feel never to meet Bruce Lee? We're on that cusp. And what do you feel about his lasting legacy? You know, I think you've said some of it, but I always feel as you were robbed of that, you know, you were on the plane and stuff like that. How does that ever bother you or anything? Or do you think, well, it was just one of those life circumstances?
Well, you know, a life filled with regret is a sad life. And so I think I was very lucky to, you know, have, as I said, had the opportunities that I've had. Who knows what the forks in the road are? And if Bruce had not died, he would have gone on, I think, to have become a leading figure in world cinema. He might have become an Asian Scorsese, perhaps, because he wanted to introduce more Asian philosophy and Asian culture into martial arts movies. He knew that the action and the violence could get the audience, but while they were there, they were going to get, you know, a healthy dose of, you know, this is the way we see things from an Asian point of view. Whereas, you know, Western films prior to that had tended to use Asia as figures of fun, you know, flower drums, song, you know, look at all the Hollywood, you know, Asian movies, you know, with some notable exceptions, obviously. But so, you know, Bruce had a cause that was patriotic, you could say nationalistic, but, you know, it was culturally, you know, patriotic, and that's, you know, that's perfectly, you know, legitimate. And so he had a grasp of filmmaking that he had absorbed really from a life of being born into a show business family and going to America and being on movie sets. And yeah, he knew how, you know, the grammar and syntax of the cinema language worked, and how a film could be organized. And so he was, you know, he was ready when the time came. And you know, he had budgetary restrictions on the big boss. But he was able to pull it off. So he would have been, you know, a leading figure in world cinema if he had not died when he did. Because if, you know, Enter the Dragon was going to come out and be a huge success, and The Game of Death would have been finished to his satisfaction. Whether it would have been considered too arty for Western audiences at that time would have been another matter. But I would have said that, you know, maybe some compromise in the editing of it between a Chinese version and a Warner Brothers version would have been arrived at. And and found favor with a world audience, and perhaps lifted audiences' taste as far as martial arts movies was concerned by having these deeper philosophical elements available. And so that was the gift that he would have given to world cinema. And that's why I lament his passing greatly. Now, if I had bonded with him at such a meeting, and he had accepted my, rather, naive, screenplay premise, and it was, it was written with a degree of irony, and whether he would have accepted my Western irony as an appropriate mechanism. I mean, I wanted a Chinese Dirty Harry to take the place of the usual American who comes to Asia, beats up infinitely more flexible fighters than he is, beds a couple of Chinese girls and goes home the hero. And I thought, well, why don't we have an Asian guy do this? Because I'm a multiculturalist, and I think the more we have multicultural heroes, the more likely a more peaceful world will emerge. But that's just me. So I've been on that sort of barrow for really from my teenage years, really. So I saw, using the sort of a Dirty Harry formula of tough, no nonsense cop comes to Australia, which is has his Australian counterparts are mildly racist, and he shows he's cleverer than they are, and he beats everybody up and blows things up, and good time is had by all. So if he had seen that, if he'd accepted that pitch, and accepted my my sense of humor, then who knows what might have happened to my career. But I have not spent any time thinking, oh, what might have been. I've all my energies have always been in.
But don't you feel, Brian, it's just lovely to hear you talk, that what you're hearing is a piece of history there, that you actually took the Man from Hong Kong script with you to meet Bruce Lee, and Bruce Lee could have not made it, could have actually been in The Man from Hong Kong. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, just point of accuracy, I took a 6-page treatment, which of course, okay. Now the script was somewhat longer, but it just had some of my questionable dialogue in it. But all the action beats were there, including the grenade in the mouth at the end, which was, I thought, a nice, rather shocking moment. I mean, hey, you can get blown to pieces. Does it really matter if your head goes first? But, well, the irony is, I see these things. You see, anyway. So, but he might have said, "Don't be ridiculous," and why is this man bothering me? So, look, he would have been entitled to do that. I was just a young whippersnapper from a culture that tended to treat him as an inferior. So
but he might have seen it the other way. He might have seen it the other way, and we never know. We'll never know. But it's nice to know that those little things, that you actually took the treatment with you, with that intent, which is really interesting. Yeah. Right, now let's get to the real big things. Brian, you've written a book on B movies and your experience in the genre. What information would the potential reader gain from this book, and who is it aimed at?
Okay, would you like me to present the book as I give the answer?
You can do so. Yeah, do so.
I'd have to go to the other table because the cat will not pick it up for me.
Oh, that's a shame.
I have written this book, Adventures in the B-Movie Trade, in which I had some 50 years plus experience. And I would say this book is aimed at people, young and old, older people with an interest in the history of media and can see, what it was like to make, low budget genre movies from the 60s onwards, and lots of interesting tales of how they're made, and my own personal journey through those 50 years. I hope it will encourage young people who are sort of, there is George on fire, for instance. You see that shot? That's definitely George. That's definitely Jimmy. And that's a wet face because he's got gel on his hair and gel on his face.
Yeah.
Just wish it had lasted on that little patch on his wrist, which, Anyway, so 580 pages, full color in the hardcover edition, only black and white in the cheaper paperback edition, but it covers every film that I've made, and it is and every television series that I participated in. And it is a portrait of an era for those that are interested in such things. And if you're 18 and thinking about getting into the movie business, then I hope it inspires you to overcome all the obstacles that you will now encounter with the new technology, now that filmmaking has been democratized by technological advances, and you can make a movie on your phone and edit it on your phone. I'd go cross-eyed, but anyway, call me old-fashioned. So I've written the book not just as sort of hooray for me, though obviously a bit of vanity does enter into it, but I do chronicle as many of my mistakes as possible, because I think it's important that you learn from your mistakes, and I've learned from a few of them, and the others I just repeat. I offer it as an inspiration, let's say, to people who want to really put in a lot of effort and dedication to get into, let's say, the recorded entertainment business. Be it stage, screen, television, TikTok, music videos, whatever. Here's one man's journey, and I want women to read this book, even though they may think that this is excessively macho. But it's for everybody. I think there's a degree of humor in it, and that's really what I hope. What I hope people have is a good time reading it, which is what I hope they have from seeing my films.
Absolutely. One of your greatest followers, or maybe I'm wrong, but it seems to be one of your greatest followers, is Quentin Tarantino. How has your work inspired him in his productions?
Well, I'm sure the fact of the matter is that every film you see from childhood onwards, lodges something that you liked about it, and it's going to have an influence upon you in some way. And I know I've been influenced by Hitchcock, not that I've made any specifically Hitchcockian films, but his eye, his sense of pace. We all have our influences. So I think when Quentin was first seeing my films from 1975 onwards, when The Man from Hong Kong was first played in Los Angeles, and briefly, but it failed in its first release in the US. They retitled it The Dragon Flies, and there were far too many dragon ripoffs that had flooded the box office by then. So that was an unwise marketing move by Fox. I think that was the first one of mine he saw, and he certainly saw it on the Z channel when it was sold to them a few years later, the first cable channel. But when he worked in a video store, some of my films were coming through as just straight VHS releases, and that's where he saw Siege of Firebase Gloria and Dead End Drive-In and so forth. So it's very kind of him to have given me a nod in an interview with Entertainment Weekly, where he referred to me as Brian Trenchard Smith was his favorite obscure director. And now, look, I think obscure is better than dead. The dead have their place, you know, and they have their honor too. And one day I will be dead. And so I think of Hilaire Belloc's epitaph: "When I am dead, I hope it may be said, his sins were scarlet, but his books were red."
Oh, very good.
I
very
hope
good.
my sins are scarlet, but my films hopefully will be digitally read, and my book will be read. Anyway, that was kind of him to do that, and I really like his style. I like his quirky, anarchic style, and the way he messes with your mind with an unreliable narrator, with switching the time frames around, and Pulp Fiction was a masterpiece, so I always like what he does, and I think Inglourious Basterds is one of the most, it is the most incredible World War II film ever made. But obviously there are many worthy depictions of World War II. But I thought as a sly look at it from the 2003 perspective, let's say, sorry, it was later than that. For all the years, just sort of shrink it to one. Everything he does, and this last one, God, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, again, another masterpiece. Yeah, he can make long films that do not appear long. If you think they're long, you're not paying attention. They're dense, they're rich in all sorts of nuance and flavor, and that's why they bear repeating. And so I look forward. I just hope he doesn't stop at 10 movies, like he said he's going to. Yeah. But I may see him. He may come to Portland in the next couple of weeks. Maybe I will see him then.
Well, give him my best, and we love him, and we love what he does, and we love, and as you can see, I really have. It's been a total honor, Brian, a total honor. It's been a long time coming, and as I say, as a big kung fu film fan who started in 1973, to go see Man from Hong Kong was an absolute delight. I do have the quad of it. And I have sent you Dragon, the cover of Dragon magazine. I would like to see it, just to see if you actually knew.
Yeah, or if you just sent it to me now.
Yeah, I sent you in between one of the meetings. I think I sent it to you, just a little. It's a yellow cover.
Well, that was on land. You see, that was his takeoff point in the movie. We had to see him actually starting to run, and so they towed the kite to inflated, and then enough to get his legs off, and then we could cut to a wider shot with Grant there.
So would you like that magazine, Brian?
Yes, please. And my address, let me do a reply. If you've been martial arts reporting for 50 years.
Yeah, I worked for a magazine called Martial Arts Illustrated, and basically covered all the movies, reviewed everything that I could get my hands on. So I've been in the martial art movie thing and still continue. There's one thing that I am asked you a question about, which is really important. And I missed it. You actually wrote 2 magazines. You brought out 2 magazines. Can you tell us a little bit about those? Because they were called the World of Martial Arts, I think.
No, there was this, it's called The World of Kung Fu and
World of Kung Fu, sorry.
Revised edition. So I pumped out the magazine at the same time as the documentary.
Right.
And it managed to sell, about 3/4 of the print run. And I think I have a copy in the cupboard there. So if you want me to talk about it, I can present it.
Yeah. That'd be lovely.
So this was it.
Oh, wow. Oh, that is fantastic.
I doubt maybe somebody has copies on eBay. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll have to have a look. I'll have to look for those, definitely.
Probably
That is beautiful.
might have been a 20,000 copy print run, and pretty much sold out. And then I did would have sold out. Then I did the revised edition, just had a few more pictures, a few more pages, and that almost sold out. That it did okay. So anyway, this is and it was sold for 80 cents, and it had obviously some color pictures, but
wow,
black and white, and so Jeet Kune Do was
and
this was another center spread, and
King Boxer.
Yes, that was a goodie. Was that called Five Fingers of Death?
Five Fingers of Death. It's low lie.
Yeah, and so we had some aspects of martial arts training, and so there was
Bruce again. Enter.
But we had some local guys who demonstrated some moves.
Wow.
So forth. Anyway, so that was the.
So and did you do two issues of that? Did you?
Yes, I did 2 issues. There was a revised issue, though I think we kept the same front cover because, well, how can you argue with that?
No.
I also was at the same time pumping out four of these a year.
Oh wow!
Well, just as you have to be a Renaissance person in Australia in the 70s, and so 60-page, same publishing company, 60-page glossy with color pages interwoven, and it sold very well. Of course, I was on a fixed fee, but I basically was the founding editor.
Wow.
Similarly, I credit for this too. So
wow. Oh, that's definitely to look for. I love that.
I don't know where you might find it, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, I'll keep having a look. Don't worry. That's fantastic. Well, what attracted you when you were a young man to a life in film and media?
Well, I just have always been attracted to movies. I think the first experience of the moving image was when I was in Libya, when my father commanded an Air Force base there, and I was probably 4. I went there at just turning 2, and came back at just over 5. Sometimes they would have a 16mm projector, and in the quarters for the troops there, they would show movies projected onto a sheet hung on a clothesline, just outside with the runway beyond at night, and so that was my first introduction to cinema, and probably sitting on my mother's knee and looking at the interesting gizmo that created these images and sent them, and a projector. And so I was introduced to a projector at my first school and learned how to work it, and made 8mm films at my second school, and that got me my first job. The guy said I could edit film, and I I edited somebody's 16mm footage for the central electricity generating board of how they could put up pylons by bringing in all the material by helicopter and without having to chew up farmers' land. And so they shot footage of this, and they didn't know what to do with it. And the executive's daughter happened to be my girlfriend when I was 18, and she said, "Oh, Brian can do it." So I did. And then I could say, I've edited 16mm film. And that, when I went to Australia, was I was able to say that. And within 3 weeks of arriving in Australia, got a job cutting news film for Channel 10 in Sydney. This led to making promos, and promos led to making trailers for theatrically released films, which an American company recruited me for. They had an operation in England, and I came back to England, made trailers for Hammer Horrors.
You made an interesting trailer that I'm quite interested in. It's called, you did the trailer for Crossplot with Roger Moore.
Yes.
And I have that. I actually have that because it actually turns up on Crossplot when it was released. That trailer's on there. So that's it. Yeah.
That's interesting. Is it on YouTube?
I don't think it is. It's on it's just on a DVD. I can get you one and send you, no problem.
Well,
there's a new, so when I saw it, I thought, ooh, Crossplot. Not many people actually know about that film. And I think it was with Roger Moore and a guy called Alexis Canner, who had quite a big part with Patrick McGowan in The Prisoner. So lovely trailer.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad you like it. I think I mean, my trailers tended to be, by modern standards, too long, and I'm certainly guilty of arch commentary lines. But anyway, I've made over 100 trailers for theatrically released films, and I still sort of had that as a parallel career. You have to You have to.
So you really got the film bug from an early age, really, then.
I got the virus, really, the cinema virus, which I caught in Libya. There's an interesting story for you, and it's been with me ever since, and I'm glad of it.
When you were younger, because we're World of Martial Arts TV, so of course we're going to lean a lot on the martial arts side, and I think I've got some things there that you might remember and you might say no. But what was, as a young man, before you actually did any martial arts movies, had you had any introduction to martial arts or done any martial arts when you were younger?
Asian martial arts, no. I boxed at both my prep school and my subsequent boarding school, Wellington College, and there I took up fencing and eventually captained the fencing team. We beat Eton in my year, I therefore have an interest in personal combat, let's say. Hi, Mitzi. I'm in the middle of a podcast, and we're being recorded. And let me just tell my hosts here, I'm speaking to the wonderful Mitzi Kapture, who is my star in the Silk Stalkings television series. Do you remember Silk Stalkings?
Yeah, I do. Definitely.
Silk Stalkings. You see, you made a hit there, Mitzi. She's a wonderful actress. And still acts, but is a good woman. And when I left the show, they really wanted me to stay, but I think anyway, other people wanted me to leave. But Mitzi and Rob Estes, her co-star, presented me with a tote bag to take away to commemorate one of my favorite sayings on the set, which was "Fuck me dead." But something happened, a piece of scenery would fall down, or someone wouldn't turn up, And so you have to quickly work your way around that, which is the joys of episodic television, of course. And Mitzi was one of those wonderful actresses who was always letter perfect with her lines, sometimes on 10-page days. And so it is, well, I have perfect recall, Mitzi. Anyway, so we've been playing phone tag because she came up to Portland and I couldn't actually see her. So, so Mitzi, please, can we speak another time? Trees have fallen across my driveway, and wonderful British people are podcasting me, and it's a busy morning. So she says hello.
Hello to you. Hi. Yes, we remember the show very well. It doesn't get shown enough, but there we go. Yeah, I remember I remember you and the co-star. What was the co-star's name? The
Rob Estes.
Yeah. Yeah. What? He appeared in something else as well. But I can't remember what else he's famous for. But yeah, I remember him turning up in quite a lot of stuff. Yeah, it needs repeating. Definitely needs repeating on TV, but we don't get it at the moment. We might get it soon, but not at the moment.
It's on DVD. You can.
Oh yeah. It's on DVD for sure. Yeah.
Anyway.
How exciting! I had no idea I was going to meet all of you.
Yeah. Okay, Mitzi. Yeah. I'll let you go, and I'll wait for the next interruption, which will be probably people trying to cut up my trees that have fallen across the driveway. Anyway, it's oh, that's fine. Yes. You see, I like actors. I like to blow them up and crash cars into them and all sorts of other things. But, you know, I actually like them. And I think they have a difficult job. And so actors that I get along with, and that's generally pretty much everybody, I keep in touch with them when I feel they've done extra special duty. And she always did. And though it's been since 1991, 92 that I did those 5 episodes, I've always remembered her fondly, and we've kept in touch over the years.
I'm envious of you. And you got Nicole Kidman before she sort of like knew anything about filming or anything like that, really, I think so.
Well, I suppose so. She was always, I think, probably an actress from birth, and always wanted to express herself in that way. And so there was no doubt that she was going to, work in it. I was lucky to get her. She'd shot one sort of ensemble children's film on 16mm before, just before BMX Bandits. And I was happy to have put her on the big screen in 35mm scope, where she belongs.
Absolutely.
Anyway, she's the camera loves her, and she has a natural, just a natural dramatic instinct, and I think some good comedy timing. So anyway, that was good, and I always knew she was going to be a star, and I said so in a newspaper interview for the Daily Mirror. I think it's in my book, but I said she was going to have outstanding roles in every decade of her life and end up as probably playing feisty grandmothers like Katharine Hepburn. And I said that when she was 16, and it would seem that I was going to be right.
Thank you very much for your time. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. Can't wait, and I'll send you a present soon.